The message came at exactly midnight. Every screen on Earth flickered at the same moment. Every phone buzzed. Every television switched channels on its own. The Galactic Council wanted humanity to hear their words, and they made sure no one could ignore them. In the underground war room beneath Sol, 40% of Earth's most powerful people sat frozen in their chairs. Generals with decades of experience, politicians who had survived countless crises, scientists who had unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel. All of them stared at the massive screen on the wall, and all of them were afraid. 5 alien faces looked down at them. The elder species, the rulers of 12 star systems, the beings who had controlled the galaxy for 10,000 years, before humans even learned to make fire. The Voron High Speaker sat in the center. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes were like 2 yellow stones. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost bored. Humanity has violated the sacred laws of the Galactic Council, he said. You have expanded beyond your permitted territories. You have developed forbidden technologies. You have refused to submit to inspection. He paused, letting the silence grow heavy. The Council has voted. The decision is final. Humanity is now an enemy of galactic order. You have 30 rotations to surrender your colonies, destroy your weapons, and present your leaders for judgment. If you refuse, we will come for you, and we will not show mercy. The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The fear in the room was so thick, you could almost touch it. Prime Minister Baek Doyan was the first to break the silence. His hands were shaking as he stood up. We need to respond. We need to negotiate. Surely there's something we can offer them. Some compromise we can reach. They don't want compromise, General. No, Sanjay said quietly. He was an old man with white hair and tired eyes. I've studied them for 30 years. They want submission. Complete and total. Then we submit. Another politician shouted, We can't fight them. They have 1,000 warships. They've conquered species far more advanced than us. What chance do we have? The argument exploded. Voices overlapped. People shouted and pointed fingers and blamed each other for the crisis. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others called for desperate resistance. A few simply sat in silence. Already accepting that humanity was doomed, no one noticed the woman standing at the back of the room. Admiral Kang Yuna was 58 years old. She was not tall, and she was not physically impressive. Her black hair was streaked with gray, and her face was lined with age. She wore a simple navy uniform with no decorations except for a single medal over her heart. She had been listening to the argument for 5 minutes. Now she was done listening. Finally, she said, her voice was not loud, but somehow it cut through all the noise. The room fell silent. Every head turned toward her. Prime Minister Baek frowned. Admiral Kang. What did you say? Yuna stepped forward, her boots clicking against the floor. Her face showed no fear, no worry. Instead, there was something that almost looked like satisfaction. I said finally, she repeated. I've been waiting for this day for 60 years. General No's eyes narrowed. Waiting? Admiral, this is a declaration of war. They're going to destroy us. No, Yuna said simply. They're going to try. She walked to the front of the room and turned to face them all. Her eyes moved from face to face, studying each person. Do you know why the Council is attacking us now? She asked. It's not because we broke their laws. It's because they're afraid. They've been watching us for 60 years, and they've finally realized the truth. What truth? The Prime Minister asked. That we're not like the other species they've conquered. That we don't break the way they expect. That every time they pushed us down, we got back up stronger. Yuna's voice was steady and cold. They're attacking now, because if they wait any longer, they won't be able to beat us at all. A young officer spoke up nervously. But Admiral, our fleet is small. Our technology is limited. How can we possibly? Our fleet is not small, Yuna interrupted. It's hidden. Our technology is not limited. It's classified. She let those words sink in before continuing. For 60 years, we've smiled at the Council. We've signed their treaties. We've followed their rules. And while we did that, we built in secret, in places they never thought to look. She pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. The main screen flickered to life, showing images that made several people gasp. Massive shipyards hidden inside asteroids. Weapons platforms buried beneath the surfaces of moons. Soldiers training with equipment that shouldn't exist. The council thinks they know us, Yuna said. They think we're soft because we smile. They think we're weak because we talk about peace. But they've made the same mistake every enemy of humanity has ever made. She turned to face the screen, looking at the frozen image of the Voron High Speaker. They forgot what we really are. We're the species that conquered our own planet. We're the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We're the species that looked at the stars and said, "Those belong to us." When she turned back to the room, her smile was sharp and cold. The council just gave us permission to stop pretending. They just gave us permission to show the galaxy what humanity can do when we stop being polite. She looked at the Prime Minister. "I'm not asking for your approval, sir. I'm informing you that Operation Long Night is now active. The ships are already launching. The soldiers are already moving. By the time the council realizes what's happening, it will be too late." General No stood up slowly. "You planned this. All of it. For decades, someone had to," Yuna replied. "Someone had to look at the galaxy and see it for what it really is. A place where the strong eat the weak, and mercy is just another word for stupidity." Her eyes grew distant for a moment. "I learned that lesson when I was 8 years old. I've never forgotten it." She walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. The council wanted a war. Now they have one. And by the time it's over, they're going to wish they had left us alone. The door closed behind her. The countdown had begun. Colonel Park Tae-ho stood alone in the observation deck of the carrier Silent Dawn. Through the thick glass, he could see the stars stretching out forever. Somewhere out there, past those tiny points of light, the Voron fleet was waiting.
Oh.
They thought they were the hunters. They had no idea they were the prey. He was 47 years old now. His hair was still black, but there were shadows under his eyes that never went away. He had seen too much, lost too much, and soon he would have a chance to make it all mean something. The door behind him opened, and Lieutenant Cha Yunbai walked in. She was young, only 26, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had trained her whole life for exactly this moment. Her short hair was practical, her uniform spotless, and her eyes sharp. "Sir, the battalion is ready for your address," she said. 500 soldiers waiting in the main hangar. Tae-ho nodded but didn't turn around. "Do you know why I joined the Admiral's program, Lieutenant?" Yunbai hesitated. She had heard rumors, of course. Everyone had heard rumors about the Colonel's past. But no one knew the full story. "No, sir," she said. "I don't." Tae-ho finally turned to face her. His expression was calm, but there was something deep in his eyes, something old and cold. "I was 32 years old, captain stationed on Colony 7. It was supposed to be a peaceful posting. A mining colony on a quiet moon, nothing special." He paused, remembering. "We had about 3,000 people living there, families, children. Doctors and teachers and miners who just wanted to build a life." He walked past her, heading for the hangar. She fell into step beside him. Council said we had violated their territorial laws. They said we were mining in restricted space. They didn't warn us. They didn't negotiate. They just sent the Voron peacekeepers. His voice was flat now, empty. "I still remember the sound of their ships landing. I remember running through the streets trying to organize a defense. We had no real weapons. Just mining tools and a few old rifles. It didn't matter. They walked through us like we were nothing." They reached the hangar doors. Through the small window, Tae-ho could see hundreds of soldiers standing in perfect rows waiting for him. "I watched them kill 2,000 people in 3 hours. Men, women, children, they didn't care. They were following orders. Cleaning up a problem, his hands tightened into fists. I survived because I was buried under bodies. I laid there for 6 hours, listening to them search for survivors. Listening to them laugh. Yunbi's face had gone pale. Sir, I didn't know. No one knows. It's not in the official records. The council made sure of that. He looked at her directly. But Admiral Kang knew. She found me in a hospital 2 years later. I was broken, empty, ready to die. And she gave me a reason to live. What reason? Taeho smiled. But there was no warmth in it. Revenge. She told me that one day, the council would make a mistake. One day, they would give us a reason to fight. And when that day came, we would make them pay for every life they had taken, every colony they had burned, every species they had enslaved. Press the button, and the hangar doors slid open. The sound of 500 soldiers snapping to attention echoed through the massive space. Taeho walked onto the raised platform at the front of the hangar. The soldiers before him were not ordinary soldiers. They were the product of decades of secret research, enhanced strength, enhanced speed, enhanced reflexes. They could see in the dark. They could survive in the vacuum of space for short periods. They could heal from wounds that would kill a normal human. The council had banned all biological enhancement technology. They said it was too dangerous, too unpredictable. The truth was, they were afraid. They were afraid of what humans might become if they were allowed to reach their full potential. Now, they were about to find out. 60 years ago, Taeho began, his voice carrying across the hangar. The Vorin came to a small colony called Colony 7. They killed 2,000 innocent people. They called it peacekeeping. They called it justice. He paused, letting the words settle. For 60 years, we've been told to be patient, to be quiet, to smile and bow and pretend that we've forgotten. But we haven't forgotten. We've been preparing, training, waiting. He looked across the rows of enhanced soldiers. Men and women who had volunteered for dangerous experiments, who had endured years of painful modifications, who had given up normal lives to become weapons. Today, the waiting ends. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far. Today we remind them why their ancestors looked up at the night sky and felt afraid. He raised his fist. The Council has 12 warships guarding the Vorin homeworld. We have 3 carriers. They think the numbers are on their side. They're wrong. Lieutenant Yunbai stepped forward with a data pad. Sir, intelligence reports show their fleet is using standard defensive formations. They're not expecting an aggressive approach. Of course they're not, Taeho replied. They've never faced an aggressive human fleet. They think we're sheep. They're about to learn that we're wolves who learned how to wear sheep's clothing. He turned back to his soldiers. Some of you will not come back from this mission. I won't lie to you about that. But every one of you knew the risks when you signed up. Every one of you chose this path. And every one of you knows that what we do today will be remembered forever. He stepped down from the platform and walked among the rows, looking each soldier in the eye. My mother was a doctor on Colony 7, he said quietly. She died trying to save a child from a Vorin soldier. She never raised a hand in violence. She never hurt anyone. And they killed her anyway. He stopped in the center of the formation. I used to wonder what she would think of what I've become. A weapon, a killer, someone who has spent 15 years learning how to destroy the creatures who took her from me. His voice grew stronger, but then I realized something. She didn't die so that I could be peaceful. She died because we weren't strong enough to protect her. And I swore that no human would ever feel that helpless again. He raised his voice one final time, for Colony 7. For every human who ever suffered under the Council's boot. For every child who will grow up in a galaxy where humanity is no longer afraid. Today we fight, and today we win. The roar of 500 voices shook the walls of the hangar. The hunt had begun. High Speaker Morith had ruled the Vorin Empire for 300 years. He had conquered 17 species. He had destroyed rebellions that threatened to tear the Council apart. He had never once felt fear, until now. He stood in the command center of the Vorin homeworld, surrounded by advisors and generals who refused to meet his eyes. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the same image over and over. 12 of their proudest warships reduced to floating metal in silence. Show me again, Morith commanded. His chief advisor, a thin Vorin named Kessin, pressed a button with trembling claws. The recording played once more, 3 human vessels had dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the border system. They were small compared to the Voran warships. Simple, almost primitive in design. The Voran commander had laughed when he saw them. He had opened a communication channel and demanded their immediate surrender. The human response had been simple. A single word. No. Then the weapons fired. Morith watched the recording with cold eyes. The human ships moved faster than anything he had ever seen. They dodged attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Their weapons cut through Voran shields like they weren't even there. 18 minutes. That was all it took. 18 minutes to destroy 12 warships that had taken decades to build. The Voran commander's final transmission was just a scream that cut off suddenly. Possible, Morith said, for the 100th time. Their weapons were regulated. We inspected their technology every cycle. They had nothing like this. They lied, Kessin whispered. For 60 years, they smiled and nodded and let us inspect their public facilities. But they were building in secret, in places we never looked. Marath turned on him with fury in his eyes. Then why didn't we look? We have the finest intelligence networks in the galaxy. We have spies in every species. How did they hide this from us? Kessin lowered his head. I don't know, High Speaker. Perhaps they are simply better at deception than we realized. One of the generals stepped forward. His name was Torvin, and he was old even by Voran standards. His scales had faded to a dull gray, and his movements were slow. High Speaker, he said carefully. I believe I can explain. Morith waved impatiently. Then explain. Torvin walked to the holographic display and brought up an ancient file. The symbols on it were old, very old. Dating back to the first days of human contact, we discovered humanity 60 years ago. The Council commissioned a full threat assessment. I was a young officer at the time. I was part of the team that prepared the report. He pressed a button, and words appeared on the display. Words that made several advisors gasp. Species designation, human origin. Planet Earth. Sol System Threat level. Extinction class recommendation. Immediate quarantine, or eliminator and more, stared at the words. Extinction class. We've never given any species that rating. What does it mean? It means, Torvin said slowly, that our assessment concluded humanity was capable of destroying the entire council if given enough time. He paused. We recommended killing them immediately, before they could become a threat. But we didn't kill them, Morith said. We made peace with them. We gave them a seat at the negotiating table. Yes, the council decided that elimination was too extreme, that humanity could be controlled through treaties and regulations. Torvin's voice grew bitter. They thought that 60 years of peace meant the humans had been tamed, that they had accepted their place. Kessin spoke up nervously. But they hadn't been tamed. They were waiting. Yes. Torvin nodded. And now we understand why they were given the extinction class rating. He brought up new images on the display. Footage from the captured Voran station at the border. Human soldiers were moving through the corridors. But they weren't moving like normal soldiers. They were fast. Impossibly fast. One human soldier dodged laser fire that would have killed anything else in the galaxy. Another tore a sealed door off its hinges with bare hands. A third took a direct hit from a plasma weapon and kept fighting, the wound healing before the camera's eyes. What are they? Morith whispered. Enhanced, Torvin replied. They have modified their own bodies, made themselves stronger, faster, more resilient. We banned this technology across the galaxy because we knew how dangerous it was. But they developed it anyway. In secret, Marath watched as a single human soldier fought through an entire squad of Voran elites. The Voran warriors were the finest in the galaxy. They had been bred for combat for thousands of generations. And this one human cut through them like they were children. This is why we classified them as extinction class, Torvin continued. Not because of their technology, not because of their resources, because of what they are capable of becoming. They have no biological limits the way other species do. They adapt. They improve. They never stop pushing themselves forward. We gave them 60 years to prepare, Kessin said, his voice hollow. Yes, Torvin turned off the display. 60 years of peace. 60 years of treaties. 60 years for them to study us? Learn our weaknesses. Build weapons specifically designed to destroy us. Moreth sank into his command chair. For the first time in 300 years, he looked old, tired, afraid. What do we do? He asked quietly. How do we fight something like this? The room was silent. Finally, Torvin spoke. I don't know if we can, High Speaker. We are facing a species that was designed by evolution to be the ultimate survivors. They have conquered their own planet, survived countless disasters, and emerged stronger every time. They do not give up. They do not surrender, and they do not forgive. He looked at the empty display where the images of destruction had been. We thought we were the masters of the galaxy. We thought no species could challenge us. But we forgot the first rule of survival. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. The most dangerous creature is not the one with the biggest claws. It is the one that has been waiting in the shadows, watching and learning until the perfect moment to strike. Moreth looked around at his advisors. These were the finest minds in the Vorin Empire. The leaders who had guided their species to dominance over 12 star systems, and all of them looked as lost as he felt. Contact the other elder species, he finally said. Tell them we need to meet. Tell them the situation is more serious than we thought. What should I tell them exactly? Kessin asked. Moreth closed his eyes. Tell them we may have just started a war we cannot win. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, because deep down, every Vorin in that room knew they were true. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between stars, the human fleet was moving, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop it. The bridge of the homeland's fury was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery. Through the massive windows at the front, Admiral Kungina could see the Vorin defensive line crumbling. Their ships were scattering like frightened animals. Their famous formations, perfected over thousands of years, meant nothing against weapons they couldn't understand. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the battle with an expression that revealed nothing. Around her, officers worked at their stations, calling out reports and coordinates. But everyone kept glancing at her. Everyone wanted to see how she would react. She didn't react at all. She simply watched Captain Shin Jae-won approach her carefully. He was 40 years old, with a thin face and intelligent eyes. He had served under her for 10 years and he still couldn't read her. Admiral, he said softly, the Council is requesting negotiations. They're offering full withdrawal from human space. Reparations for past incidents. Recognition of our sovereignty. Declined, Yuna said without hesitation. Jae-won blinked. Admiral, with respect, this is everything we've asked for. Full independence. No more inspections. No more regulations. We would be free. No. Yuna finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were dark and deep, like looking into a well that had no bottom. We would be pausing. They would retreat, rebuild, and wait for us to lower our guard. Then they would come back. They always come back. She turned away from him and walked to the side of the bridge, where a small window looked out at the stars. Jae-won followed her. Admiral, I've served with you for a decade. I've followed your orders without question. But I need to understand. He hesitated. Why are you doing this? What drives you? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. Do you know what my first memory is, Captain? No, Admiral. Fire. She paused, watching a Vorin cruiser explode in the distance. I was 8 years old, living on Colony 7 with my mother. She was a doctor. The kindest person I ever knew. She used to tell me that the galaxy was full of wonders, and someday we would explore them together. Her hand moved unconsciously to the medal on her chest. The only decoration she wore. The Vorin came at dawn. I remember my mother waking me up telling me to hide. She pushed me into a storage container and told me to stay quiet no matter what I heard. Yuna's voice remained steady, but something in her eyes flickered. Then she went outside to help the wounded. Jae-won said nothing. He barely breathed. I stayed in that container for 6 hours. I heard the screams, the weapons fire. I heard my mother's voice once. begging them to spare the children. She closed her eyes briefly. They didn't spare anyone. Admiral, I'm sorry. I didn't know. No one knows. The council made sure of that. They erased the records, changed the story, made it look like we were the aggressors. She opened her eyes and looked at him directly. I spent the next 50 years making sure I never felt that helpless again. She walked back to the center of the bridge and stood before the main display. The Vorin homeworld was visible now, a blue-green sphere surrounded by the scattered remains of their fleet. When I was 15, I joined the military academy. When I was 20, I started gathering information. When I was 30, I began building the network. When I was 40, I had enough people in the right places to start the real work. She smiled slightly. The council had spies watching our military bases, our research centers, our government buildings, but they never thought to watch our mining colonies, our asteroid stations, our merchant ships. That's where you built everything, Jaewon said, understanding dawning on his face. For 25 years, we moved resources through channels they never monitored. We recruited scientists who officially retired. We trained soldiers in facilities that didn't exist on any map. She gestured at the fleet visible through the windows. Every ship you see out there was built in secret. Every soldier was trained in secret. Every weapon was developed in secret. And no one ever found out? People found out. People always find out. Her voice grew cold. Some of them had to be dealt with. I did what was necessary. Jaewon felt a chill run through him. He had always known that Admiral Kang was dangerous. But hearing her speak so calmly about eliminating people made him realize just how much he had underestimated her. Does that bother you, Captain? Yuna asked, watching his face. He thought about it carefully. I don't know, Admiral. I want to say yes, but then I think about what we're fighting for, what we're trying to prevent. Good. She nodded. The galaxy isn't a fair place, Captain. The Council has been killing and enslaving species for 10,000 years. They smile and talk about peace while they grind entire civilizations under their boots. If we have to become a little bit like them to stop them, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. The communications officer spoke up. Admiral Colonel Park reports that the ground assault is proceeding as planned. The Vorin capital will be secured within 3 hours. Good. Yuna turned back to the main display. Tell the Colonel to minimize civilian casualties where possible. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to send a message. Jaewon stepped closer. What message is that, Admiral? That humanity is not to be touched. Not now. Not ever again. She looked at him with those deep, dark eyes. The Council ruled the galaxy through fear. They made species afraid to fight back, afraid to even think about fighting back. Today, we show them that fear works both ways. The Vorin homeworld grew larger on the display. Soon, human soldiers would be walking through their streets. Human flags would be flying over their government buildings. The most powerful empire in galactic history would be brought to its knees by a species they had dismissed as primitive. And what happens after, Admiral? Jaewon asked. When the war is over? When the Council is defeated? What then? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Her eyes never left the display. I've been fighting this war in my mind for 50 years, she finally said. Every day I've imagined this moment. Every night I've dreamed about it. And now that it's here, I realize something. What? I don't know what comes after. I've spent so long preparing for war that I never learned how to prepare for peace. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. Maybe that will be someone else's job. Someone who didn't spend their childhood hiding in a metal box while their mother died. She straightened her uniform and walked back to the center of the bridge. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today, we have a war to finish. Her voice grew commanding again. All ships, maintain formation. Prepare for final approach to the Vorin homeworld. We end this today. The bridge crew responded with a unified shout, and the homeland's fury moved forward, carrying 50 years of pain and anger toward its final destination. The war lasted 47 days. In that time, Humanity conquered more territory than the Vorin had conquered in their first 1,000 years. Fleet after fleet fell before human weapons that seemed to ignore every known law of physics. Army after army surrendered rather than face soldiers who moved too fast and hit too hard. The other elder species watched in horror as the great Vorin Empire crumbled. Some tried to send reinforcements. Their ships never arrived. Some tried to negotiate separate peace treaties. Their ambassadors were politely but firmly turned away. Admiral Kong Yuna had been very clear in her orders. The war would end when she decided it would end. Not before, and now, finally, she was ready. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 10,000 years. Its walls were carved from stone taken from a dozen conquered worlds. Its ceiling was painted with murals celebrating the elder species' greatest victories. Its floor had been walked by the most powerful beings in galactic history. Today, it felt very small. The 5 elder species sat in their ancient seats, but they no longer looked like rulers. They looked like what they were: survivors of a disaster they still didn't fully understand. High Speaker Marath sat at the center, his scales dull and his eyes tired. Around him sat representatives of the 4 other elder species. Once they had commanded armies that could darken the skies of entire planets. Now, those armies were gone. The great doors at the end of the hall swung open. Admiral Kung Yuna walked in alone. She wore her simple Navy uniform. No armor, no visible weapons. No guards flanking her sides. She walked slowly down the long hall, her footsteps echoing off the ancient walls. Morith watched her approach with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been respect. This small, aging woman had destroyed his empire in less than 2 months. She had done what no species had done in 10,000 years. And she had done it while barely raising her voice. Yuna stopped before the raised platform where the elder species sat. She looked up at them with an expression that gave nothing away. "High Speaker," she said calmly. "I believe we have business to discuss." Morath leaned forward in his seat. "You could have negotiated. We offered terms. Fair terms. Instead, you chose to burn everything we built." "You chose that for us," Yuna replied. "When you announced your war, when you threatened us with extinction, you gave us no choice except the choice we wanted all along. You would have listened to reason. You would have listened to fear. And we were tired of being afraid." Silence fell over the hall. The other elder species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. None of them dared to speak. Morith finally sat back. "So, what happens now? Do you execute us? Enslave our people? Burn our worlds as we burned yours?" Yuna reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. She placed it on the table before her. "New terms," she said simply. "You will accept them, or this war will continue until there is nothing left to accept them." Morith picked up the chip and inserted it into the display console beside his seat. His eyes moved across the text, and with each line, his expression grew more disbelieving. "You want us to free the enslaved species? All of them? Yes. You want the council to be dissolved? The entire governmental structure we've maintained for 10,000 years? Yes. And you want humanity to become the guarantors of galactic peace?" He laughed bitterly. "You would make yourselves rulers of everything. No." Yuna shook her head. "We don't want to rule. We don't want an empire. We want to make sure that no one else has to live the way we lived. The way every species under your control has lived for millennia." She stepped closer to the platform, and even though she was looking up at them, it somehow felt like she was looking down. "You asked me once, through your ambassadors, why humans smile so much. Do you remember? You thought it was a sign of submission, a sign that we were happy with our place, compliant." Morith said nothing. "But that's not why we smile," Yuna continued. "We smile because we're patient. Because we know that time is always on our side. Because we learned a long time ago that the best way to defeat an enemy is to let them think they've already won." She turned and looked around the great hall, at the murals of conquest and the trophies of war. Your ancestors built this place to celebrate their power, to remind everyone who entered that the elder species were eternal and unchallengeable. She turned back to face them. But nothing is eternal. Nothing is unchallengeable. You forgot that, and it cost you everything. The representative of the Cathari, a species with 4 arms and pale blue skin, spoke up nervously. And what prevents you from becoming like us? Today you speak of freedom and peace. What happens in 100 years? 1,000? Power corrupts. It always has. Yuna nodded slowly. It was, she had to admit, a fair question. You're right, she said. Power does corrupt. That's why we're not keeping it. She gestured at the data chip. If you read carefully, you'll see that the New Order isn't an empire with humanity at the top. It's a federation. Every species gets a voice. Every species gets a vote, including you. Morith's eyes narrowed. You would give us power again? After everything. Not power, a voice. There's a difference. Yuna's expression softened slightly. I spent 50 years preparing for this war. 50 years thinking about nothing but revenge. But somewhere along the way, I realized something. Revenge isn't enough. Destroying you isn't enough. If we just take your place, nothing really changes. The cycle just continues. She looked at each of the elder species in turn. I don't want humanity to become what you were. I want to build something better, something that will last. She paused. I don't know if I'll succeed. I'm a soldier, not a politician, but I have to try. Because if I don't, then everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed, will have been for nothing. The hall was silent again, but this time the silence felt different. Less hostile, more thoughtful. Finally, Marath stood. He was old, older than any human could ever become, and for the first time, he looked it. You have defeated us, he said slowly. You have destroyed our fleets and conquered our worlds. You have proven that humanity is everything we feared it might become. And now you stand before us, offering mercy instead of extinction. He walked down from the platform until he stood face to face with Yuna. Up close, she could see the weariness in his eyes. The weight of 10,000 years of history pressing down on him. I do not understand you, he admitted. I do not understand how a species that was nearly destroyed by us could choose peace over vengeance. But perhaps that is why you won. Perhaps that is why you will always win. Because you can imagine a future that we never could. He extended his clawed hand. The Vorin accept your terms. Admiral Kong. May the new order be wiser than the old. Yuna looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she reached out and shook it. It will be, she said quietly. We'll make sure of it. As she turned to leave, Morith called out one last question. Admiral, what will you do now? You've spent your entire life preparing for this moment. What comes next for you? Yuna paused at the door. When she looked back, there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Something that looked almost like peace. I think, she said slowly, I'm going to rest. I've been tired for 50 years. It's time to stop. She walked out of the great hall, leaving the shattered remains of the old order behind her. Outside, the sun was rising over the Vorin homeworld. The first human sunrise in this corner of the galaxy, the first of many, and somewhere in the distance, children were laughing. Human children and Vorin children, playing together in the rubble of a war that had already begun to fade into history. Admiral Kong Yuna listened to that sound for a long moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, and walked toward a future she had never dared to imagine. The war was over. The real work could finally begin.